All right, we're back for another Teen Wolf episode review. This time it's Teen Wolf episode 616, Triggers. Sorry this one's going up like super late. If I'm not mistaken, this was going to go up on a Wednesday. I was on vacation over Labor Day weekend, and I didn't get back until like midnight Sunday, so I missed the episode when it first aired. And I watched it Monday, and then I was going to do the review Monday night, and then I fell asleep. So I'm recording it on Tuesday, and then I'm probably just gonna put it up tomorrow because I have school and I don't feel like waiting up to do it. So anyway, the next episode, Teen Wolf, first one in 2 weeks after episodes 14 and 15 both came out 2 weeks ago, because last Sunday was the VMAs, which I immediately assumed was the reason. And so this episode kind of follows the same kind of path. So this episode, there's two main stories for this episode. There's Liam and Theo trying to distract the hunters, while Scott, Malia, Lydia, and Argent try to break into Gerard's hunter compound. There are a couple other things that happen, mostly with Agent McCall. So you see him in three different settings. You see him interviewing Gerard about him owning guns and how he's a licensed firearm dealer, just like Chris is, and he's trying to, why do you have so many weapons in such a small town? He goes, oh, business is booming. He later then is kind of, I guess, interrogating Nolan because Jiang and Tierney have vanished. They don't know that they're dead yet. They just know that their bodies were missing, and that they weren't in the van transport. So he's trying to interrogate Nolan, but Monroe just kind of puts a stop to that. And he's like, and there's a standoff between them because because he knows things. It's revealed later with a conversation between him and Melissa that Raph does know about the supernatural now, but he doesn't know about it for very long, and so he's like, he can't report what's happening to his superiors because it's supernatural based, and he tries to talk to Melissa about this, and he eventually finds out that Scott didn't leave town, that they're still in town, and that they're planning to do something, and Melissa tells him, hey, they've been doing this for forever, let them handle this, they know what they're doing. At the school, there is the hunters amongst the students are testing all of them by cutting them on the back of their hand and if they heal, you're not human. And so there's a young kid who kind of looks like a young Ed Sheeran, and he's kind of dodging them because he doesn't want to get cut. Eventually he does, but he runs off, and Aaron follows after him. Aaron's one of the people, or whatever creature is possessing Aaron, and the kid goes into the locker room, and his hand heals, and he says that he's a were-coyote. But then Aaron comes up, and Aaron says, I'm looking for a creature like me, and he basically, does the whole vomiting up spiders on him, and it causes him to twitch uncontrollably. So when Monroe, Gabe, and Nolan find him, Monroe wants them to put him out of its misery. And Nolan seems frightened. He seems like the events of last episode and Jiang's death in the last episode kind of really messes with him. So it's up to Gabe, who goes up and he strangles the kid. And it's really kind of perverse and weird in a lot of ways. And so while Nolan's in class, he sees Mason leaving school with what looks like a bunch of supplies, what looks like a bunch of sleeping bags and blankets and food. So he calls up Monroe or whoever, some hunter, and he says, hey, I think I found them. And he follows Mason to an abandoned zoo near Beacon Hills, but it's revealed to be a trap that Liam and Theo are trying to get all the hunters occupied, so that they abandon Gerard's little warehouse so that the rest of the pack can blow up his guns. And at first it doesn't work. At first Nolan can only convince two people to show up. So Liam and Theo get into a very loud fight to convince the hunters that yes, the pack is there. And And while this is happening, Malia, Scott, Lydia, and Arjun are kind of beside themselves because they want to break into this compound, but it's dangerous. And while it's happening, Malia's kind of having visions, or having visions and premonitions. She sees Arjun's windshield breaking, and she hears gunfire, but she kind of can't figure out what it means. And then eventually they're able to break in. So I think for the next bit, I'm just going to focus specifically on Theo and Liam's story. So once all the hunters show up, they're like, okay, we're going to go run, and we're going to hide in. And one of the reasons that Liam wanted to go there is because it reminds him of like ancient cities that were built in a way that you could easily get lost, and that was the main, so that they could kind of potentially ambush or be very easy for them to kind of distract the hunters. But when Liam sees Nolan, he kind of starts to get angry, and he kind of starts to not think clearly, to the point where he eventually gives up him and Theo's location to Nolan, who tries to attack them. But then Liam attacks him and kind of knocks himself out in the process, because they both kind of fall off of, like, not a cliff, but like off of down a level. And when Liam wakes up, he's haunted by a hallucination of Brett, who's taunting him about not being in control and not being able to do anything. And when he eventually actually comes to, he's met with Nolan, and Nolan's like, I have to kill you or they're going to kill me. And so then Liam goes up and he's angry, and he pins Nolan to the wall, and at first he just punches the wall next to him, but then eventually he opens his claws up like he's gonna, slash him and kill him to death, when Theo knocks him out, and then Theo tells Nolan to run. So then after all this is said and done, and the events of the episode are basically done, they're driving back in Theo's car, and they're talking, and he's like, this fear thing, it's affecting you too. And he goes, and Liam says, but I was angry. He goes, yeah, you can only feel one emotion at a time. When you get scared, you get angry. And it kind of brings up the question, well, what's it doing to everybody else? So in the compound, Arjun and Lydia take up positions in the control room, while Malia and Scott go in to try to find the guns. But then they quickly determine all the guns are gone, and they don't know why. And so this leaves Lydia and Arjun on edge, and they urge Scott and them to leave. And right before they're about to, they pick up the scent of Tierney and Zhang behind a door, and when they open it, it triggers the alarms, and it locks the room down so that nobody can get in, and you can't shoot through. All the walls and the doors are bulletproof. And when they actually go into the room, there's a map on the wall of like the whole world, but then they find like just the skin where the tattoo was of the balancing stones that Zhang and Tierney had are just in there, and that's like the smell that they got. And then so while Lydia and Arjun are in the control room, they determine two things: that there's a fire suppression system that will go off if they trigger any of the sensors, and they manage to break open a pipe so that they could communicate to Scott and Malia to convince them that, hey, you don't touch any of the sensors. So Scott and Malia try to fight their way through, and eventually they get on top of a shelf, but a sensor kind of keeps them pinned, and it's sort of like an awkward moment. Oddly kind of reminiscent of that moment in season 3 when Scott and Allison are kind of stuck in a closet together when Arjun shows up. It's kind of reminiscent of that moment. But Lydia, in her plan to escape, she kind of swings her way up to the ceiling because there's like a sky hatch, and she breaks open the lock, and it seems like they're going to do good, but pieces of the lock break, and it trips the sensors, and then this fire suppression thing starts going, and it starts draining all the oxygen out of the room. And when that happens, more hunters show up, and they're going to go on, and they're going to fight, and they're going to try to capture or kill, probably more likely kill, Scott and Malia. And so when they're in there, and Malia says, I don't want to die in here. I'm 18, and I wanted to go to France, and there's so many things that I wanted to do. I'm not going to die in here. I'm not going to die like this. And Scott just kind of holds her because they're both kind of gasping for breath. And outside, Chris and Lydia manage to fight off all of the hunters, and then Lydia uses her banshee screams to knock the door open, thus saving Scott and Lydia. So the end of the episode is mostly a focus on kind of two different events, which is up in Scott's room. Him and Malia are having a conversation, and Malia's like, "Yeah, you remember that conversation about all the things that I wanted to do that I haven't been able to do?" And he goes, "Yeah," and she says, "This is one of them." And then she kisses Scott, which basically then they just kind of start making out in his room. When eventually they reconvene downstairs, they're looking at the map because they stole the map from Gerard's bunker. And it's basically a map of all the Nemetons that are left in the world. And there's a couple ones in particular that are very specific. You know, of course, the one in Beacon Hills is labeled, but then also one in London is labeled, which is definitely a hint towards next episode, which I'll get to again in a second. But before I get to the last part, there's a lot of conversations between Monroe and Gerard, in which Gerard seems completely like aware that they're, when they go to the zoo, they're not after the whole pack, but it's okay. He's like, if the bond between an alpha and his beta is strong. If we kill the beta, it'll affect Scott and it'll like potentially tear him apart. So he goes in and they're talking like that, but then when they go back to the bunker and they're not there and the map's gone, they kind of, him and Monroe have a tense conversation where she says, "I need to be part of the plan," and Gerard tells her, "Remember that thing I said about the bond between an alpha and a beta? Don't assume that this applies to us." So back at the Scott's house, as they're looking over that map, Raph shows up and he says, "Oh, he knows what happens to all of Gerard's guns. He gave them away to the citizens, to the normal citizens of Beacon Hills." And then Lydia starts having her premonitions again with the glass shattering and the bullet fire, and so eventually she realizes what's about to happen, and she tells everybody to get down as the living room is littered with bullets, and it's lit up, or it's in the dining room. And it seems like everybody makes it out okay, but as we focus on Scott and Malia, there's a puddle of blood starts forming on the ground, and you see somebody's hand reach up, and then it cuts to black in a cliffhanger. So next week's episode, which is Werewolves of London, promises to be a big episode for a number of reasons, which is it is the return of Ethan and Jackson, which they put out the tease for that last week, like like a whole 2 weeks early before the episode happened. And that was a cool scene. They put out another tease of them showing up at the high school and being tortured by Monroe. But also Deucalion's back, which I guess is another nod to the whole Werewolves of London thing, being that he's British. And he's advising Scott that, most likely the only way that this is going to end is if he kills Gerard. And then in another scene, and it's basically revealed in the trailer, even though they try to leave it on a cliffhanger as to who got shot, it was Melissa. And at least judging by the little clip they put out, she's a little worse for wear. Who knows if Mama McCall is going to make it. So yeah, there's only 4 episodes left of Teen Wolf, ever. Technically only 3 weeks, because for some reason episodes 18 and 19 are playing on the same day. Now, I don't know what the reasons for this are. I hope that maybe there's just like another show that they want to occupy that time slot of 8 to 9 on Sundays. Maybe, or maybe they're trying to say like, oh yeah, well you guys had to wait so long for the last 10 episodes. We're going to pump them out a little bit quicker, and we're going to give you 2 more. And which I don't know if I buy that completely, because yeah, they doubled up 14 and 15, but that was because, hey, the VMAs are happening, so if we double up, you're not going to lose a week. You're still getting the same. It's still on track. And I hope it's not like just something of just wanting to get it over and done with. Like, let's just get this done so we can move on to other things. Because, and I hope that's not the case, because, there's all these talks of wanting to reboot Teen Wolf. Like, are they just, they don't have faith in this product, and they just want to get this version of the show done so that they can start doing other things? I don't know. But, hopefully these last 4 episodes kind of pick up the pace. I know that, a lot of the big returns are going to happen. Like I said, there's 3 characters returning next episode, and that's not counting Kate returning, who is confirmed. It's not counting Styles and Derek returning, who are confirmed, and it's not counting the potential return of Haley Webb, who kind of shows up in the Super Tease for the season. So who knows? Again, I hope it kind of picks up pace. I like the slow build that they've had with the season so far, and I like that that this episode triggers is a little bit more. It has like a very Mission Impossible kind of heisty feel, which is different. It's a different kind of feel for Teen Wolf. But yeah. So again, I'm going to hopefully get next week's episode up in Sunday night or Monday morning in a much more timely fashion. But thanks for watching. Again, like and subscribe to Plugged On. After next week and the week after that, the series finale will be on the Plugged On channel. So yeah, bye.